Hi, my name is Lydia Toll, and I'm the producer of the upcoming Healthcare Payment and Revenue Integrity West Congress, a one-of-a-kind event uniting payers and providers in addressing challenges along the claims continuum. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Deborah Welch, the Senior Business Integration Manager at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, who'll be giving a talk on driving ROI through optimized vendor management. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Lydia, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. So, my first question to you is actually, what would you say is the key metric to look at when evaluating the performance of a vendor? And then would you say is the time to maybe look at bringing someone else in?
Our key metric is usually savings against our claims population, and more specifically, members that touch our bottom lines. We have different lines of business here at Blue Cross that, Medicare, FEP, and then, our own internal members. So our major metric is looking for savings against those members. But, a high secondary metric is how easy it is to integrate with the technology of the vendor. So many things change so quickly within the landscape of payment integrity that taking 2 years to set something up just isn't in the cards for when we're evaluating vendors.
And then what would you say is maybe when you realize that like now it's time to move on to someone else, what would be the key metric that you would look at when you make the decision that maybe you need to look to another vendor?
If we're adding sort of a second vendor behind a current vendor, we look at how well that vendor is performing and if they're able to find additional savings. If it's a long-standing relationship and a newer vendor has come in with a newer, fancier system, for lack of a better word, we will sometimes add on to there. But, we have a tendency to stand up a vendor and really keep them for a long time, which I think is great when working with a health plan or a vendor, having that long-term partnership, because you can have some open conversations about what's working, what's not working, what's new in the market, and where can it help drive our savings and our goals.
And then obviously a lot of health plans are now looking at insourcing a lot of tasks rather than outsourcing. So what do you think a health plan, especially a health plan like yours, who has kept vendors on for a long time, should consider when they think about maybe starting to insource a little bit more than outsource?
Yeah, that's a great question. We, over the past year or so have started to look at what can we bring in-house versus paying for from an outside service. One of our key drivers is this a specialty market we're getting into? And therefore the resources to staff that program or that project internally would be incredibly expensive staff or require such a large staff that it outweighs the benefit of just going to a vendor. A lot of times the solutions with the vendor become not just the initial project, but all of the, intelligence and research behind it that we don't have to then keep up ourselves. So there has to be a balance. What can you afford to bring in-house in a specialty market, but yet, understanding that it's more than just one person to run the project.
Mm-hmm. But then there's obviously another element to it, which is the transparency. When you outsource to a vendor, you don't have as much transparency of what goes on, whereas when you insource, you have a lot more transparency. So does that come into the evaluation at any point, or is it mostly cost-based?
No, the transparency is a big key factor. In working with a vendor, if the vendor will allow us to brand their policies or their statements as either co-written by Blue Cross or, just the vendor, that can become, sort of a tipping point too for the conversations, because we obviously can't just say X vendor told us to do it. We have to be able to stand by it. So if we are able to co-brand or even label it as our policy as supported by, that will help as well in the conversations. Obviously, we have incredibly tight contracting and, legal agreements that, don't allow us to just sort of grab intellectual property, but, that being able to stand behind it is important to Blue Cross. And to almost any payer, I would say. Yeah.
And so obviously when you look at evaluating a new vendor, there's a long process. And as you said, you have very tight contracts. There's I'm sure, a very lengthy process to get that completed. So when you go into those things, what are the difficulties or the key issues when you try to evaluate whether the return on investment of a vendor is actually worth it and whether they're suitable for your needs? What are the key metrics or the key issues they bump into, especially with not being able to share all of your data because of obviously privacy reasons?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we go into a proof of concept or an opportunity analysis, the biggest thing is the privacy and security checks within our procurement division, and then the data sharing. We've, over the last year, stood up sort of a standard extract that has what we believe to be enough data to give the vendor a look at our world of claims and what we look at. And making sure that the vendor is willing to be flexible during this time period with the data they get does speed it along. The other piece of that too is, flexibility within the contracting, because, there's a lot of risk whenever data goes out the door. So we have to be very careful of that, with limits and liabilities and all of that. So, we tend to do a two-stop or a two-step process. We do a contract for just the OA that says you'll get this data, you can use it for this long and for this purpose. And if we decide to move forward, then we have to do a more formal NDA, BAA, all of those legal paperwork for an actual project.
Okay. And so obviously you're going to be talking about this and a lot more at the event. So my next question is, what are you most excited to hear at the event or to see at the event, or what are you most excited about overall?
I'm really excited to dig in a little bit more to some of the AI initiatives that are going on within the payment integrity arena. There's been so much that has changed over the past 3 years, let alone 3 months. And then, making sure that, I've got the right list of vendors to be evaluated in my stack. So finding out who's new, who's merged, who's moved around is really important. And in an event like this kind of gives me a one-stop shop to doing it instead of spending hours on Google wondering what happened to this company or what happened to that product.
And so what would you say to someone who's maybe considering attending but haven't quite made their mind up yet?
I would say they should definitely sign up and attend. When I went to the event in Boston, it was great. It was a little bit smaller than this one, but I think having a larger event space and a larger footprint into payment integrity will be great. And I think it's really worthwhile, even if you are a veteran to payment integrity, but especially if you're new to payment integrity and what's going on. I think it's a great place to concentrated learning 2 days. You'd be amazed.
Amazing. Well, I really hope people take your advice, and I am very excited to meet you at the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas in September. I think it's going to be a great event, and I hope you have a great time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, great. I can't wait to see you too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.